So moving forward, let's go to our Eclipse and do our practical with JDBC template. This is my Eclipse, and if you remember in our previous tutorial with H2 with JDBC template, in that tutorial we have we did write some code, and in this case also the most of the code will be same. So what I'm going to do is let me just copy that old code and paste it here only, and I'm giving name demo2, so we can use the same code again. And let me close this our old project, and this demo2 is our project that we're going to work on. So if you remember, we had this demo application first, and here we did just initiate the application. Then we have controller, employee controller, and here we have four APIs. Then we have we wrote this model for employee, and we have repositories and service. And if you remember, we did write few queries to initiate our database in this data.sql and schema.sql. So moving forward, we need to write code for our Oracle and JDBC template, and first thing we're gonna need is the driver. So I'm going in my pom.xml, and first thing we're gonna need is our driver for our Oracle database. So let me go to my browser, and here I'm going to Maven repository, Maven central repository, and here I can write something like Oracle JDBC. Here we have 12.1.0.2, and let me copy this and pasting it here. Okay, so if you see here, it is showing us error that missing artifact Oracle JDBC jar, right? So what is happening here is Oracle have some privilege issues, licensing issues with people, and that's why Maven central repository doesn't have Oracle jar, and that's why it cannot download. So you can go to your browser and you can type something like Oracle 8 download, Oracle 8 jar download, and we have this link in here. I'll put this link in the description, and you can download this jar from here. So let me download it first. Okay, so I already downloaded it here. In my download folder I have this Oracle 8.jar, and now we need to set it up. So there are a couple of ways to add this jar file with our project or in Maven, and I prefer one way. I just go there and copy that jar file and rename it. So for that, let me rename this dependency first, and I'm giving name as OJDBC8, and which is the name of that jar package basically, and it is not anything different. And this version should be perfect, and for you can see your version from our Oracle website, that from where you download that OJDBC8.jar file. And if I go in my M2 folder, you can see we have Oracle folder inside repository. Then we have Oracle OJDBC8, and here we have this version, and I'm here. So I can go in my in my download folder and copy that file and paste it here. So we have this one, and now rename this, and so that's why right click, and we have, now I need to put version name, so hyphen 12.2.0.1, and if I hit enter, save, and if I go in my Eclipse and do Maven, then update project, I don't have that error anymore. And the other way is you can fire a Maven command, and I'll put all the details in the description if you want to go with that approach. But any approach is fine. We just need to make sure this error is not there. So now we are ready to move forward, and let me go to our application.properties file, and right now we don't need this S2 console, so let me delete this, and I'm saving it. So now moving forward, if you remember, we have discussed that Spring Boot creates data source automatic for H2, but this is not H2 anymore, so we need to create a data source, and for that we have this spring dot data source, and here we need to give all the details, such as we have URL, and you can pass URL such as JDBC, then we are using Oracle, then we are using theme driver. So if you remember, we discussed that there is a 4 different kind of driver based on the architecture, and this theme is one of them. We will see this in other tutorials in our other series, but for now just copy this as it is. And this database location is at localhost, and I can give port which is 1521. So thing is, we are using that service name instead of SID. If you are using SID, then we need colon. If you are using service name, then it is backslash, and I am putting ORCL. So this is the detail for our data source URL. Then we need to pass username and password. So for that, you can do something like spring dot username, spring dot data source username. Then we have username was JR, and the same way we need password. So let me just copy this, paste it. Password was pass. Another way to initiate this data source is you can go to your main class file, main function. You can go to your main class file, and here you can write a function with bean annotation, and this function's return type should be data source. So let me give name something, get data source. This name doesn't matter, you can write anything. And here let me use data source builder, and this data source builder can take various inputs, which is like, first we need to pass create, then we need to pass this URL, and this URL is same as our that we pass in here. You can do one you can do other thing also. You can take this value dynamically from properties file, and another thing we need is we need user, which is JR, then we need password, which was pass, and I can do build. Let me save this. Let me run this program one time so we can make sure there is no error. Yeah, so I run this and there is no error in here, so we are good. And but if you see here, it is not initializing our database. So if I go in our SQL developer, and if I refresh this, it is not initializing. So reason for that is we already put this data and schema.sql in here. But if you remember, we had one more property which is called initialization mode. And if I do like spring, then if I do something like spring dot data source dot initialization mode, and if you see here, if I go here and hit control space, then you can see this, it is saying they have default mode as embedded. So only for embedded databases it will do automatic, otherwise we need to specify this, and for that let me put always. And now if I restart this application, you can see we will have some errors. Yeah, so thing is, it is saying if I go at last, it is saying table or view does not exist. So let me go to our schema.sql, and you can see we are putting this drop employee table, drop table employees, and that means here we have employee table, not employees. So let me rename this, and same here. So if I restart this again, okay. So if you see here, it is giving another error which is saying missing right parenthesis. So if I go here, if I refresh this, I don't have employee. I have employee, but there is no specification for any column or anything. So what happened exactly is this SQL syntax is not compatible with our Oracle database. So if you remember, I told you that SQL have different versions, and different database supports different versions. So this SQL we need to rewrite again, and for that purpose the rewrite is not that much difficult. It is this few syntax is not compatible. So instead of integer, we need a number, and this instead of this auto increment primary key and stuff, instead of this we gonna need generated always as identity. So this way we can specify that auto increment thing, and this first name, instead of variable character we will have variable character 2 everywhere. And in our joining date, instead of this timestamp we need date object, and instead of this current time we can put system date, sys date. So that's how we specify. So let me restart this, and you can see everything is perfect. So if I go my SQL developer, if I refresh this, you can see we have this employee table. We have ID, first name, last name, address, and joining date. And in how here, if I do something like select star from employee, okay, if I run this query, you can see we have one entry, Batman, Batcave, date is 15 December. The data is coming from this data.sql. So that's how we can initiate this database and stuff. But in actual condition, in actual scenario, sometimes we don't need to initiate this database all the time. So we can put a condition here, something, if this table is not exist, then you can initiate, otherwise let it go. Because what was happening in our S2 case is every time you shut down your application, the data was wiping out. But in our now it is not gonna happen. So this condition I can delete because we don't need this all the time, right? But you can put a condition and move forward if you want. Something like, if this condition, if this table is not exist, then create one and initialize, otherwise let it be, stuff like that. So moving forward, let's check our all 4 APIs that we wrote for our H2 database. And so for that I'm going in my Postman, and here this was the our API employee slash, and this is a get API. If I do hit send, then I can see this Batcave is coming, which is coming from our old data, or which is coming from our Oracle. So let me check our another API. If I do control copy, then paste, and this is our post API, and I'm copying this everything, putting it in body, row, tags, JSON. Here we don't need ID, and we don't need this joining date. And here let me put another name such as JR Academy, and let me put name here San Francisco. If I do hit, then it is saying successfully added. If I go here and paste, send it again, I can see I have 2 employees now. And if I go in my SQL developer, if I refresh this, and inside employee, you can see we have this 2 entries, employees, and we have these 2 entries. We have this BAT and GR Academy. And let me check our put API, and this was the same. If I do this, then put, I need a whole thing. Let's say instead of, I need to change this name, then row JSON, and here is this name, I'm changing name such as Superman. And if I do hit send, it is successfully updated, and here in get I can see these names are updated. Let me try delete API, copy this, and then here we were passing our employee ID, so I'm passing 1. If I do hit send, successfully deleted, then in here we don't have number 1. So this all 4 APIs is working perfectly fine, and but let me restart this application. So if you remember in our previous case, when we restart our application with H2, it wasn't doing anything, means all our data was wiping out. Let me delete this both the file from here because it will initialize otherwise the database. So I'm not going to initialize anymore, and I can remove this if I want, Control S, and then if I do restart this application in my Postman, I can see the same data again, because doesn't matter your application is up or not, it's not gonna affect this database because this is external database. And that's how our actual application will work, because database should be separate from our actual application. And data, sometimes we need to do so many other things with the database. Sometimes we share same database with multiple applications. Sometimes we do other manipulation with the database, or we can use multiple database for same application. So in a big companies, sometimes they use the combination of SQL and Mongo based on the requirement of the application. And sometimes they use so many other database because they need to manage a huge databases. So those all are the techniques to manage the data and stuff. But this is how we can integrate Oracle database with our Spring Boot application without doing any much changes. We just change the driver, we change some few settings and some SQL queries. So if you remember, I told you that SQL queries can be the problem. And in here we saw that problem. Every time we change the database, our SQL query should be compatible with that other database. So if we are writing SQL queries, we need to make sure everything is in perfect form. So that's why I told you that we should put all the SQL queries in one constant file. So in future, if we need to change something, then we don't need to find it in our code everywhere. We just put everything in one particular file and we can change it from there. So that's all for now in this tutorial, and in next tutorial we will see Oracle database with Spring Data JPA. Same way we will use our old project and we will just change the database and see how it is working. So see you in next tutorial. Till then, like, subscribe and keep learning. Thank you very much.